We might consider this name for a moment. Emissaries of divine light. It may be that some like this name because it provides them with a prop, so to speak. Feeling upheld by association with emissaries of divine light. Others may feel somewhat embarrassed about the name. And this possibly springs from the fact that the person concerned knows that he has not experienced what it means to be an emissary of divine light. In either of these instances, of course, one's association with this name is not clear. One must be an emissary of divine light to appreciate being an emissary of divine light. We were considering something with respect to the heaven this morning, the heaven where we belong, particularly at these times. Of unified radiation. Heaven is the place of being. It can be said that earth is the place of achieving. We cannot achieve without first being. Therefore, all achievement springs out of the heaven where being is the state. Mention was made this morning with respect to happiness. Most people want to be happy. There may be some distorted ways of trying to experience this, and very often there is the expectation that someone is going to make one happy. But if we realize that happiness is a state of being, then being happy requires that we be happy. In other words, it's not coming from someplace else. One must be whatever it is to know whatever it is. Because being and expressing are one. As was indicated, the Word and God are one. God is. The Word is consequently expressed. You can't separate being and achieving in this sense. Our concern is to be in heaven. This is the place of being. The place where what constitutes being may be known. If we merely try to be on earth, we'll find considerable struggle involved. For one thing, we discover almost immediately that we are in the process of passing away. Therefore, to continue to be on earth requires considerable struggle. In one way or another, we have to make a living, for instance, hard work. One way or another, we have to keep reasonably healthy to continue to be on earth. This dieting business may come into the picture. There are all kinds of things that are seemingly necessary to sustain our being on earth. And no one has ever been successful. In spite of all the effort, all the struggle, all the increase of knowledge, apparently, we all end up not being on earth. This is quite understandable if we recognize that the only place of being is heaven. If we are to experience what it means to be, to know the qualities of being, heaven is the place. Now, we have had opportunity to consider this matter of heaven, talk about it. No matter what may be said, no matter what poetically descriptive words may be used, this may engender good feelings, perhaps, but it doesn't cause us to be in heaven. When this matter is considered by human mentalities, there is a looking into another state from the earthly state. There is, therefore, obviously a consciousness of separation the place of being is somewhere else, apparently. We try to be on earth, not very successfully. We awaken to the fact that heaven is the place of being, but looking toward heaven, we do so from the stance of the earth. The experience of the oneness of heaven and earth is not known to human beings. Therefore, separation is the order of the day. We look toward heaven, we talk about it, we consider its nature perhaps, the qualities that are present in those who are in heaven. And all this may be very interesting, may make us feel superior in some way that we know all so much about heaven. But it doesn't give us the experience of being in heaven. I think still there is a tendency to think of heaven as being up somewhere, conceivably in somewhere, but somewhere else anyhow. In theory, we know better. We know heaven and earth are one, all blended so nicely. But the experience is somewhat sketchy. Perhaps the idea has been present that the human soul should somehow ascend into heaven. We got trapped down here in the earth, and there is a need to ascend into heaven. This is going up, of course. I'm sure all of you are quite well aware that it isn't a matter of getting up into heaven, soul-wise, but rather a matter of letting heaven come on earth. Now, that's good theory. Because it smacks of the truth. We are also aware of the fact that there is, in a personal sense, one who is already in heaven. This is the angel whom the soul theorizes about, or the God being. But the stance is from the soul. The mind and the heart are giving consideration to this place of being, heaven. Having some sort of awareness that there is one there who supposedly one is, but presently largely unknown. How does the truth become known? Well, we can answer that one, I'm sure. Because the one who is in heaven comes forth into expression through mind and heart and body. We call that spiritual expression. And this coming forth, presumably, fills mind and heart and body with whatever the truth is of one's own being. And if mind and heart and body are filled with this, then that is known. We didn't have to go anywhere. We didn't have to ascend up into heaven. We didn't have to get to the place of being. The place of being is exactly where we are, because heaven is exactly where we are. The opening of mind and heart and therefore body to accommodate the one who is acquaints the mind and heart and body with the one who is. Now we may look at this in a little different way, helpfully, for the moment. The soul of the human being, which is the human being, properly becomes what may well be described as the prisoner of the Lord. As human beings, we're already prisoners of the world, seemingly. We're caught. We don't seem to be able to get out of it except by dying. And most are a little bit reluctant in this regard. So if we are prisoners, in fact, and we acknowledge the fact and are honest about it, prisoners of the world, then what's so bad about becoming prisoner of the Lord? It could be looked upon as fair exchange. If we're going to be a prisoner anyway, maybe it would be more profitable to be a prisoner of the Lord. We know something about the necessity of being a servant. Love, radiant love, is the nature of being. While this word doesn't tell us what the nature of being really is, it informs us of something of which we have a little awareness. Love is the nature of being. Love is present we might say, in the midst. In the midst of everything. There is nowhere where love is not present. There's nowhere where heaven is not present, therefore. Love is in the midst, and the evidence of love in the midst was described as a garden. Here is the truth, the vibrational modes which have also been described by using various other words. The word, for one, the tone, perhaps the light, in using the word garden, it's thought of usually as having form. But the garden was planted eastward in Eden, as it is said, which is an indication of something which does not yet have form. It may be seen as coming out of the future, may be seen as coming down from God out of heaven. Heaven is a place of being. Earth is a place of form. The garden does not yet have form, except as one might recognize that the vibrational modes have a form of sorts. It is not yet substance standing up in form, but it is the design of the form in which the substance is to stand up. And so, there is love, there is the truth, and there is the action which occurs to cause substance to stand up in form, revealing life. Now, I'm describing something here which may be of assistance in allowing us to stand in heaven. And to see with increasing heavenly perspective. We're not looking for forms in heaven to convince us that heaven exists. The way we know that heaven exists is to be in heaven. And we can't be in heaven by not being in heaven. Again, we have used the analogy of the blue part of the flame. The temperate place, where the temperature is just right. We may say cool, but we could say warm. The temperature is what it should be, in other words, as distinct from what is present in the yellow part of the flame. And I'm not saying the yellow part shouldn't be the way it is. But if there is the experience of being, it is in what is represented by the blue part of the flame. We could say the place of stillness. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. Be still and know that I am God. Now, these are words which a lot of people have repeated, but they represent a state of being. One cannot experience a state of being merely by reading or speaking the words. But here is an indication of something. In that state of being, one is not self-centered, shall we say. In other words, one is not looking at oneself, trying to figure out oneself. This is the usual stance in human experience. In the earthly experience, people are always looking at themselves, considering themselves, trying to satisfy themselves, and so on. Nowadays, trying to figure out who they are, which is quite impossible because the endeavor is being carried on where the experience of being is not. The experience of being is in heaven. And standing in that place of being, there is the experience of looking forth at the windows. In other words, of encompassing what is beyond this place of being. Only when one is standing in the place of being can there be the encompassment of what is beyond the place of being, which would include the earth. One's view becomes a radiant one from the place of being. There comes an awareness of the vibrational modes which are issuing forth from the place of being, having creative effect in the realm of form. As long as a person is not in the place of being, but trying to be in the realm of form, what is happening in the realm of form occupies the space of mind and heart. There is no room for the experience of being. It seems impractical to someone who has this habit of being filled with earthly things to relinquish those earthly things and let them drain away, because the thought is that one would thereby become vulnerable. There may be some truth in this view, because the individual necessarily has to pass through some sort of a transition between the two states, or between what may be described on the one hand as a non-state, and it proves itself out as being a non-state, and a state. The state is being in heaven. The non-state is trying to be on earth. Suppose you could say it's a temporary state, which becomes no state at all. So being in heaven, the outlook, the viewpoint, extends radiantly over the vibrational modes which are present in what we have called the word or the tone, this issues forth from being. It issues forth from oneself. Be still and know that I am the source of the word to be spoken. There is one source. Differentiated by reason of these vibrational modes. As we look into the realm of form, we look into the realm of form from the standpoint of the vibrational modes which are present in the realm of form. We look forth at the windows. In this instance, the windows of heaven. And we become aware of what it is that is present, of these vibrational modes, in the realm of form. We don't see the realm of form merely as form. We see it from the standpoint of what is making the substance stand up in the various forms that are present. Now this is a description of something which necessarily must be known. And we do know it in some measure. I'm sure that all of you have been aware at times of something happening that is impelling events. I'm thinking of events which are close to oneself. Naturally, this is the first place of achievement. You can't leap over what is close. You become aware at times, I'm sure, when you're not too cluttered up with the forms of the earth, that things are under control. There is something moving, and it will all work out as it should, not merely because you sit back in your easy chair and do nothing and just have faith that it's all going to work out as it should, but because you are handling the vibrational elements that are present. Aspects of the vibrational mode of truth. And miraculously, things happen. At least, it seems miraculous to the human mind. But it doesn't seem miraculous to you. You know that it works that way. It's absolutely sure. It may be that you need to yield a little more in heart and mind so that you can have the fuller experience of the emergence of these vibrational modes into your immediate environment. Causing things to happen there. The happenings will come, of course, according to the states of the forms that are present in your environment. If there are yielded forms, then things can work out very quickly. If there are resistant forms, there may be a certain amount of unnecessary delay, a certain amount of destructiveness even. But you are aware that all that is happening because of the vibrational modes for which you are responsible. Emergent in your own expression of living. Now this is all natural when the experience of being in heaven is sufficiently present in your mind and heart, because they are no longer cluttered up with all the things of earth. Now, there is a dilemma here for a while, supposedly, because one feels that one has to keep one's hand on all these things of earth, or they'll get away from you somehow. or overwhelm you or whatever. And to that extent, you cling to these things of earth, you keep yourself filled up with them, and there is no room for the experience of what is happening in heaven. There's no room for the experience of true being. Obviously, a person who is characterized by a clinging to earthly things is not characterized by the qualities of being, and therefore will not be in heaven. One must be characterized by the qualities of being to experience being in heaven. If mind and heart are so cluttered up with earthly things, there's no room for that to be known. So, generally with most people, they let a little go here and they let a little go there, see if it's all right. Sometimes they don't think it's all right. They don't give it a chance, so they grab hold again. Well, we need to learn to relinquish the clutter in measured pace, shall we say, not being foolish and trying to pitch it all out in one fell swoop, because the openness of mind and heart would not be adequate at that point to receive all the qualities of being in one fell swoop. So certainly there is, as I say, a transition. But increasingly, as one operates from the standpoint of being, one can be intelligent about it. And one can require mind and heart to relinquish what needs next to be relinquished. And there will be what is necessary to flow into the space. Now, there are those who have imagined that they were somehow saved. We have quite a few born-again Christians these days who imagine that they are somehow saved. But they tend to become rather foolish, don't they, in their behavior. Because the mature qualities of being are not available yet. Well, they are available, but they are not in position to receive them into mind and heart yet. Because mind and heart are still very immature. We move with measured pace. I think it's been a pretty slow measure at times, unnecessarily slow. I trust not the dead march. But we can liven the pace a little, I think. We do it easily as more of the experience of being becomes known, and that knowing is not a fanciful thing, but reveals itself because we are able to see and understand the vibrational modes that are emerging and to participate in that emergence, to administer the creative cycle, in other words, to let it happen with respect to what is happening in the world of events. We need no longer be afraid of the world of events. Because we are responsible for the creative cycle out of heaven. The Lord is in his holy temple, and all the earth keeps silence before him. Well, the earth hasn't got around to that yet. Still very noisy. The temple is often thought of as the form, the human form particularly. But the human form is merely potentially a reflection of the temple. The temple is in heaven. The temple is open in heaven. And the creative cycles emerge in these vibrational modes. We become increasingly aware of what they are. We don't imagine that we are going to see the vibrational modes that are operative on the larger scene of things entirely yet. But in relationship to our own immediate environment, we can begin to see them, to recognize their presence, to be aware of how they are bringing into form what should be so. Substance is standing up in these forms because of the sound of the tone, because of the creative word that is spoken in living. And changes occur, because these forms, as I said before, are all living forms. They are brought forth by reason of love and truth. The evidence of this is life. So they are living forms, and we share the responsibility in this regard. Alert to recognize what is happening. We won't recognize it if we're all bogged down in our earthly responsibilities, we call them. Well, we have earthly responsibility. We can handle those without being bogged down in them, because we handle them in this manner. Let the vibrational mode be present, and what should happen will. If we initiate something in this regard and then forget about it, of course it collapses again. So the consistency is, again, a very vital factor here, that there may be a measured unfoldment, because we move with measured step, turning neither to the right nor the left, but letting the vibrational mode be the cause of all that occurs in our fields of responsibility.
This morning in our comment period, Lillian gave thanks for the purity of your consistently representing the truth, allowing the creative pulsation to be accurately brought into form for all of these years. And we would all recognize that and give heartfelt thanks for that, because what we can see on earth is present because of it. But there has been, as you pointed out in the beginning of the service, a separation. We in the earth and what goes on in heaven separate from us, and you representing that. and to perhaps represent the transition of which you are speaking tonight, I would leave the place in the earth and move through the transition and stand with you in heaven, seeing from heaven and allowing the consistency of that accommodation of what is necessary to be present with you, so that what is needed in the immediate sense can be understood and handled as it should be.
I trust that in representation, all of you are standing in the same place. It is sometimes good to let the substance stand up by reason of this vibrational compulsion. It may be seen as a symbol, but it may also be seen as a fact that something is done. And if the creative process is allowed to emerge so that something is done, then that has considerable significance, even though human minds might be a little skeptical as to what, for instance, is actually being done by reason of the fact that Nancy came up here and now you all have stood up. We do have an awareness, however, of this creative movement which relates directly and immediately to our own individual affairs. And we are all individually responsible in this regard. And assuming that individual responsibility, it is assumed in the collective sense, because it is the same creative movement of love that is bringing forth whatever is to be brought forth. And it all coordinates, and all things do in fact work together to perfection. We begin to discover the truth of this in our own personal experience. I praise the Lord that we may stand together.